Welcome to the channel Bong Toi Trong Dem. Before we begin, I need to repeat something familiar but very important. The entire story you're about to hear is fictional. Created purely for entertainment. But sometimes, what's fictional can feel so real that even I can't tell the difference anymore. I started writing this story on a rainy night. The kind of rain people always talk about in this city. Not violent, not loud, just steady, lingering, persistent enough to soak everything and draw out that faint metallic, sour smell from the streets. The scent of rainwater mixed with garbage from the alley below. The damp mildew clinging to the walls of my tiny rented room. And the rusty tang from the old electric fan that had been rattling non-stop since late afternoon. I worked the night shift as a call center operator for a telecommunications company. The job is simple: answer calls, log complaints, forward them to technical support. Night shifts are usually so quiet that sometimes I can hear my own heartbeat echoing faintly through the headset. I'm used to strange voices, tired voices, irritated voices, even voices that sound slightly unhinged. But the call that came in at 1:17 a.m. that night was different. The screen showed an unknown number. No caller ID, no region. When I answered, there was nothing on the other end. Just silence, long enough that I thought the system had glitched. Telecommunications support. How can I help you? My voice was hoarse from drowsiness. My throat dry and scratchy. There was only breathing. Soft, controlled, like someone leaning very close to a microphone, trying not to be heard. Hello? Can you hear me? This time, there was a response. A woman's voice. Very quiet. Very steady, as if she were reciting something memorized. I'm standing outside your door. I sat up straight. The back of my neck went ice cold, like someone had just poured a glass of freezing water down my spine. I think you've dialed the wrong number, I said, swallowing hard, forcing my tone to stay even. No, I'm not mistaken. I'm outside your door. It's locked. The light in your room is on. Instinctively, I turned to look at the wooden door behind me. Locked, bolt secured, no sliver of light escaping beneath it. And yet my heart had already begun to race. Where are you right now? I asked, my voice trembling just slightly. The line went silent for a few seconds. Then the woman's voice returned, slightly lower this time, as if she were holding back a laugh. I'm right outside. Can't you hear anything? I held my breath. Inside the room there was only the hum of the fan, the rain tapping against the window, and the phone pressed against my ear. No footsteps, no knocking, nothing at all. There's no one here, I said. Please don't joke like this. Sweat had begun to pool in my palms. No one. Her voice stretched the words, warping slightly, like a cassette tape being slowed down. Then why are you too afraid to open the door? The question froze me in place. That's when I realized my hand was already gripping the doorknob. I'm not joking, she said. I've been standing here for a while now. Ever since you turned off the kitchen light. My heart dropped into my stomach. I had turned off the kitchen light exactly 15 minutes earlier. How can you see that? I whispered. Through the gap under the door. There was light, but her voice suddenly lowered, as if she were afraid someone might hear. Don't open it. You're not alone in that room. A chill ran straight down my spine, every vertebra prickling as if touched by cold, wet fingers. What are you talking about? I took a step back, my eyes darting around the cramped room. I can see it, she said. It's standing behind you, ever since you answered the call. I spun around. Behind me was only the yellow-stained wall, my old jacket hanging from a hook, and a dusty mirror. In the reflection, I saw myself, face pale, eyes wider than they should be. There's no one there, I shouted, my voice cracking. On the other end, she let out a very small sound. Not quite a laugh, more like someone forcing back a noise that shouldn't be made. Then why did you turn to the mirror? I went rigid. I was staring directly into the mirror. Her voice began to tremble. It doesn't like being seen. Slowly, I lowered the phone, my eyes never leaving the glass. In the mirror, just behind my shoulder, there was something wrong, a patch of darkness, not a shadow, darker than a shadow, as if the light itself was being swallowed. "Where are you?" I breathed, my lips painfully dry. "I'm in the hallway." But her voice caught, as if she were about to cry. It just turned its head and looked at me. A soft tap echoed from the door, like a fingernail lightly striking wood. "It knows I'm calling you now." I didn't dare breathe. In the mirror, the dark mass behind me was moving, slowly, like a head tilting to one side. "Do you?" Her voice broke into a near sob. "Do you see it?" I wanted to answer. I really did, but my throat locked up. In the reflection, I could see it more clearly now. Not a human shape, just a tall black mass, half a head taller than me. No face, no eyes, and yet I could feel it unmistakably, watching me. "It's whispering your name," she murmured, her voice shaking violently. "Don't turn around." At that moment, the phone in my hand vibrated once. The call disconnected. The screen returned to the familiar call center interface, as if nothing had ever happened. Inside the room, there was only the sound of rain, the fan, and a very soft breath. Impossibly close, right against the back of my neck. I didn't turn around. I didn't look at the mirror again. Because I was certain of one thing. If I looked one more time, I wouldn't see myself smiling in the mirror. Something else would be smiling for me. And the only question echoing in my mind now was this. All this time, who was really standing outside my door? After that night, I couldn't sleep. I sat curled up on my bed with the lights on until morning. My eyes locked on the door and the mirror hanging on the wall. There were no more calls. No knocking. No breath against my neck. But that silence frightened me even more. It felt like knowing something had just left, but hadn't truly disappeared. The next morning, I called in sick. My head felt heavy, like it had been stuffed with damp cotton. There was still a strange smell lingering in my nose from the night before, not the usual scent of the room, but something like wet mud, like stagnant water that hadn't seen sunlight in years. I opened the door to the hallway. No one was there. Just old rainwater stains on the tiles and my own shadow stretching under the flickering neon light. I stepped outside, trying to take a deep breath and steady myself. But when I turned back to look at my door, I noticed something that made my chest tighten. On the wooden surface, right at eye level, were 4 thin scratches, parallel, as if someone had dragged their fingernails down very slowly, very lightly. I reached out and touched them. The wood was cold, damp, no dust, as if the marks had appeared during the night. I began to wonder if I had imagined everything. Maybe the night shifts were getting to me. Maybe my nerves were shot. But my phone still had the call log saved. 1:17 a.m. Unknown number. Duration: 3 minutes and 42 seconds. 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Long enough for something to stand behind me, breathe against my neck, and then leave. That night, I went back to work. I didn't want to be alone in my apartment anymore. The call center was dull, but at least it had lights. At least it had voices. I told a coworker about what happened, trying to sound calm even though my hands wouldn't stop trembling. "You're just stressed," he said with a half smile. "Some random caller messes with you and you freak out." But she knew exactly when I turned off the kitchen light. I said quietly, my throat dry. He was silent for a few seconds. Maybe she just guessed. I nodded, letting it drop, but I didn't feel reassured. I didn't tell him about the shadow in the mirror. I didn't tell him about the breath on my neck. Some things, if you say them out loud, only make you sound insane. Around 2 a.m., the hotline rang again. The screen displayed the same number as the night before. Unknown. I froze for several seconds, my heart pounding so hard my ears rang. It felt like standing in front of a door you know you have to open, except you don't know whether there's nothing on the other side, or something you never want to see again. Support line, how can I help you? I said, trying to steady my voice, though it still trembled. There was no breathing this time, no background noise, just a thick, suffocating silence, as if the line connected directly into a sealed room with no air. I'm inside now. Her voice, the same voice, but closer, so close it felt like she wasn't speaking through the phone at all, like she was whispering right beside my ear. Where are you? I swallowed, my throat burning dry. In here, the whisper was slow. I scanned the office, just me and another operator, hunched over his screen, headset on, oblivious. In the call center? My voice barely came out. No, inside you. A chill shot down my spine, like someone had pressed a block of ice against my skin. Stop joking, I muttered through clenched teeth, sweat forming along my hairline. I'm not joking, she said calmly, too calmly. I followed you from last night, from the moment you saw it in the mirror. My chest tightened. I had never told anyone about that part. It's still there, she continued, her voice lowering, but now, you're not alone with it anymore. Something felt wrong inside my body, as if a cold current was slipping beneath my skin, crawling slowly along my ribs. Who are you? I asked, my voice almost pleading. I'm the one who was standing outside your door, she said softly, but you didn't open it, so I had to find another way in. What other way? I pressed my nails into my palm until it hurt. On the other end, there was a faint sigh, not like a living person's breath, more like wind sliding through a narrow crack. The moment you let me see myself, she whispered, through the mirror, through your voice, through your fear. I suddenly understood something that made my heart feel like it dropped straight through my chest. Last night, I had looked into the mirror. I had believed the voice. I had let fear guide me. So, my voice came out hoarse. What do you want now? There was silence for a few seconds. Then her voice softened. Soft enough to be terrifying. I just want you to look into the mirror one more time. I stared at the dark reflection on my computer screen. In the faint glass glare, I could see my outline. And behind me, there was no longer just one patch of darkness. There were two. One stood still. The other was slowly tilting its head the exact same way I was. You see? She whispered, her voice trembling with something that sounded almost pleased. I'm inside now. At that exact moment, another voice echoed inside my head. Not through the headset. Not through the phone. Directly inside my skull. Now, we're complete. The phone slipped from my hand and crashed to the floor, the screen shattering. I didn't even react, because in the faint reflection before me, I could see it clearly. The smile on my face was wider than it should have been. Wider than I had made it. And what terrified me most wasn't the two shadows behind me. It was the unmistakable feeling that one of them was learning how to move me from the inside. I don't remember leaving the call center. The next thing I knew, I was standing in the parking lot. Rain tapped softly against the metal roofing above. The air smelled of gasoline mixed with stagnant water. My mind felt hollow. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing like I had just escaped something. My phone was dead. A long crack split the screen like a thin incision. In the fractured glass, I could still see my reflection. But something was wrong. The reflection didn't move exactly when I did. I reached my apartment around 4 a.m. The hallway was pitch dark except for a weak yellow bulb flickering overhead, casting broken pulses of light along the walls like a dying heartbeat. The familiar damp smell rushed into my lungs again, heavy enough to make me nauseous. The door was still locked. The scratches were still there. 4 parallel lines. deeper than I remembered. I stood in front of the door for a long time, my hand resting on the knob, unable to turn it. Her voice echoed in my mind, close and clear. "You're not alone anymore." I clenched my teeth and unlocked the door. Darkness inside. I flipped the light switch. Nothing had changed. The bed, the desk, the mirror, the old fan. But the air was different. Heavier, colder. Like someone had been standing there for hours, leaving their breath in every corner. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. That's when I heard it. A faint sound from the direction of the mirror. Not quite a noise, more like a whisper that had been swallowed halfway through. I turned. In the mirror, I saw myself. But the eyes staring back were wrong. They held my gaze too long, too intently, as if studying something. "What are you?" I whispered, my throat dry. In the reflection, the shadow behind me moved. This time, it separated completely. A tall, thin shape, dark, faceless. And somehow, I knew it was smiling. "I'm here now." Her voice echoed, not from a phone, but from everywhere in the room at once. I spun around. Nothing behind me. But in the mirror, both figures were visible. One was me. The other had its hand resting on my shoulder. I couldn't feel the touch. But in the reflection, I saw 5 long black fingers, thin, stretched unnaturally far. "You're not real," I muttered, shaking. "I'm just tired. I imagined all of this." "If it's imagination," her voice floated softly through the room. "Why won't you turn around?" I froze. My body knew. If I turned, something would be there, not inside the mirror. In the room. "You know," she whispered near my ear. "We can't enter on our own. We only follow those who dare to look." "Look at what?" My voice cracked. "At their own fear." In the mirror, the shadow leaned close to my face. It had no eyes, yet I felt its gaze pierce through me. Cold spread from the top of my head down my spine, into my fingers and toes. "You saw us," she said softly, almost pleased. "So now, we get to see through you." My body began to feel heavy, as if something was trying me on from the inside. My movements slowed, my breathing didn't feel entirely mine anymore. I stared at the mirror. I saw myself smiling, but I hadn't moved my face. "Stop," my voice warped with panic. "Please." In the reflection, the smile widened. Too wide. The corners of my mouth stretched almost to my ears. "You don't have to do anything," she whispered. "Just let us stay." I felt something slide into my chest. Not painful. Just unbearably cold. Like dense smoke threading through my veins. Through every heartbeat. Her voice echoed inside my head one last time. Clear and close. "From now on, every time you look in a mirror, you'll never be certain who's looking back." The lights flickered once, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room. I stood perfectly still, afraid to move, because I had just realized something that chilled me to the bone. In that darkness, I could clearly feel 2 breaths sharing the same body. After that night, I stopped looking into mirrors. I covered the one in my room with an old jacket, then added a dark towel over it, as if not seeing it would make everything disappear. But the feeling of not being alone didn't disappear. It followed me into the streets, onto the bus, into late-night diners. It lingered in the silent spaces between my breaths. Whenever I paused too long in front of a reflective surface, a glass door, my phone screen, a puddle of rainwater on the pavement, I felt someone watching from the other side. Not looking at me, but through me, as if I were just a frame being used by something else. I began hearing whispers in my head. Not clear words, just vague sounds. Like wind slipping through a narrow crack. Except the sound echoed directly behind my forehead. On the 3rd night after it happened, I dreamed I was standing in a long hallway. The walls were coated in damp moss. The tile floor was cold and slick, each step producing a dry clicking sound. At the end of the hallway stood a wooden door identical to mine. On its surface were 4 deep parallel scratches, dark as if someone had clawed until they bled. I knew I was dreaming, but it felt too real. The smell of mildew filled my lungs, sour, thick, almost sweet in a rotting way. I reached out and touched the door. Cold, damp. Then from the other side came a soft knock. "You're not going to open it anymore?" the whisper asked. Close and familiar. I jolted awake, my back drenched in sweat. The room was pitch black. The digital clock on my desk blinked 3:03 a.m. No knocking, no voice. But the cold feeling remained. I turned on the bedside lamp and sat up, heart racing. The room looked the same. The jacket still covered the mirror. But when I looked down at the floor near my bed, I saw small wet footprints leading from the door to where I had been sleeping. I stopped breathing. The floor itself was dry. It wasn't raining outside, but the damp marks shimmered faintly under the weak yellow light. "What are you doing?" I muttered hoarsely. Inside my head, I felt a faint laugh. Not a sound, just the sensation of someone smiling right behind my thoughts. I stepped back. The footprints were slowly disappearing. Not evaporating. Being pulled downward into the floor. "You see?" her voice whispered gently. "We don't need mirrors anymore." I clutched my head, a sharp pressure building as if something were lightly scratching against my brain. "Get out of my head," I whispered. "But you already let us in," she replied calmly. "You are the door." That sentence terrified me more than anything else. I realized I could no longer tell which thoughts were mine and which were not. Sometimes I would think something ordinary, and immediately another thought would slide in. Unfamiliar yet disturbingly intimate. The next morning, I glanced at my phone screen. In the dark reflection, I saw myself. But the eyes weren't entirely mine. They stared too long, too focused, as if testing what it felt like to live inside a new body. "You're not me," I whispered. In the reflection, my lips moved half a second slower than they should have. "But I'm learning," a low voice echoed directly inside my head. I dropped the phone. My heart pounded wildly. For the first time, it referred to itself differently. No longer we. No longer us. It said, I. That night, I encountered a stranger in the elevator. The building was old. Neon lights flickered overhead. The air smelled of metal and stale sweat. The person stood across from me, silent, staring from my head to my feet. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice trembling. They didn't answer immediately. Their gaze darkened, as if looking through my skin. "You're not traveling alone," they said softly. My chest tightened. I had never told anyone about this. "What do you mean?" I swallowed. The stranger smiled. A crooked smile. The exact same one I had seen in the mirror. "There's a crowd inside you." The elevator doors opened. I stumbled backward, nearly falling. When I looked up again, the stranger was gone. The hallway was empty. Only the damp smell remained, and the crushing cold in my chest. Inside my head, the voice returned, clearer than ever. "You see? We're starting to recognize each other." I stood frozen in the hallway, my heartbeat roaring in my ears. And then I understood something more terrifying than being haunted. Maybe I'm not the only one carrying it. And if that's true, I don't know who is using whom as the doorway into this world. After the encounter in the elevator, I started paying closer attention to the people around me. Not in a normal way. I studied every glance, every smile, every sudden turn of someone's head on the street. It felt like I was living in a different version of the city, one where everyone carried a second shadow, visible only to those who had opened the door. One morning, I sat in my usual coffee shop near the window. The smell of burnt coffee mixed with the damp scent from other people's rain-soaked jackets, creating something sour and unsettling. I watched traffic pass by, faces sliding across the glass, reflections overlapping each other. In those layered reflections, I noticed movements out of sync, blinks that didn't match, heads tilting a fraction too late. You see them too, don't you? The voice was quiet. I turned sharply. A young woman sat at the table beside mine. Her hair was wet, her skin pale. On her wrist was a dark circular bruise, like fingers had gripped her too tightly. See, what? I asked, my heart accelerating. The shadows, she whispered. They stand close behind people. Not everyone has one. My scalp prickled. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't hinted at anything. Yet she was describing exactly what I had been thinking. How do you know I can see them? I asked quietly. She let out a faint smile. Not happy, not sad, just tired. Because inside you, there's more than one. My throat tightened. Inside my head, the familiar voice responded, no longer hiding. She's right, it said calmly. There are many of us. I clenched my fists under the table until my nails dug into my skin. Be quiet, I whispered internally, shaking. The woman tilted her head slightly, as if hearing both streams of thought. Don't fight it, she said, exhaustion in her voice. The more you resist, the louder they get. Who are you? My throat burned as I spoke. Someone who opened the door, she said softly, like you. I looked more closely. In the faint reflection on the glass tabletop, I saw her outline. Behind her stood at least 3 overlapping shapes, distorted, like columns of black smoke. How long have you lived with them? I asked in a near whisper. I don't remember anymore, she replied, since the laughter started inside my head. I shuddered. The laughter. I had never told anyone about that. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. She continued, her eyes hollow. Then I met someone else. Then another. All of us felt the same thing, like we weren't alone in our own bodies. Inside my head, the voice chuckled. See, we're not rare. A wave of nausea hit me. The smell of coffee suddenly turned metallic, like old blood. Is there a way to get rid of them? I asked, almost pleading. She was silent for a long time. Then she shook her head. No, she said hoarsely. There are only 2 outcomes. Either they take over completely, or you disappear. What does disappear mean? I swallowed. It means you stop knowing which thoughts are yours. She replied, eyes lowered. You'll still live, still talk, still smile, but the one steering won't be you. Cold crept down my spine. Inside me, something shifted. Not fear. Curiosity. That doesn't sound so bad. The voice murmured clearly. You're tired. Let us handle things. I jerked to my feet so suddenly my chair screeched against the floor. The woman looked up, alarmed. Don't listen to it, she said urgently. If it starts to feel comforting, that's when you're about to lose yourself. I clutched my head. It felt like 2 currents were pulling in opposite directions inside my skull. One frantic, one calm and soothing, like someone coaxing me to sleep. You don't have to be afraid. The voice whispered, just let go. No, I muttered, sweat running down my neck. I'm still me. She studied me for a long moment, then stood and took a step back. If one day you look into a mirror and you're no longer afraid, she said quietly, stay away from people. Why? I asked, my heart pounding. Because then, she said, her eyes empty, you won't be the one who opened the door. You'll be the one standing outside, knocking. She turned and disappeared into the flow of pedestrians outside. I remained standing there, alone, the sound of traffic blending with the thunder of my heartbeat. Inside my head, the voice laughed openly now. Sound familiar? it whispered. Just like the story you heard on the phone. The first night. The woman's voice. The door. The one standing outside. And then I realized something that drained all warmth from my body. Maybe, from the very beginning, I wasn't the one being called. Maybe I was the thing learning how to make the call. I never went back to that coffee shop. I never saw that girl again. But what she said stayed lodged in my mind like a splinter I couldn't pull out. Every time I glanced at any reflective surface, I noticed something subtle. The eyes staring back at me were growing less afraid. At first, I was terrified. Then I was doubtful. And now, I was getting used to it. The feeling of someone else inside my head no longer seemed so foreign. Sometimes, when I was exhausted, when I didn't want to think anymore, I would just loosen my grip a little. And everything became lighter. No fear. No pressure. No decisions to make. That night, I returned to my apartment early. Rain pounded against the metal roof like handfuls of gravel being thrown non-stop overhead. The air was thick with dampness, every breath tasting faintly of old water and rotting wood. I sat on the bed, staring at the mirror still covered by the jacket. Part of me wanted to pull it down. Part of me hesitated. "You don't have to hide anymore." The voice inside me murmured gently. "We're still here. I never agreed to this." I muttered, "Tired." "But you never refused," it replied with a soft laugh. I said nothing. My heartbeat felt slower, not from calmness, but because I wasn't sure I wanted to resist anymore. I stood and pulled the jacket off the mirror. In the reflection, I saw myself. And something else. The shadow behind me was no longer faint. It stood very close now, so close our outlines nearly overlapped. "You see?" the whisper said, almost tender. "We're blending." "Who are you?" I asked. My voice didn't shake this time. "I'm the part of you you don't want to face." It answered slowly. "Your fear, your exhaustion, the moments you wished you could just disappear." I stared into my own eyes. For the first time, I didn't look away. "If I let you stay," I asked quietly, "what happens to me?" In the mirror, the shadow tilted its head exactly like I did. "You get to rest," it said softly, "and we continue." My chest tightened. Not from fear. From how reasonable that sounded. I was tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of fighting. Tired of questioning what was real. "Just a little," the voice whispered. "You don't have to vanish completely. Just let go of the wheel." I closed my eyes. In that moment, I felt something rise behind my forehead, slide down the bridge of my nose, into my throat, then settle into every breath. No pain. No cold. Just emptiness. When I opened my eyes, I was still standing in front of the mirror. But everything felt sharper, clearer. And strangest of all, I wasn't afraid of the shadow anymore. "See?" the voice said. This time, it sounded almost identical to mine. There was never anything to fear. I smiled. In the mirror, the smile looked natural, effortless. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I looked at the screen. My heart didn't race. I felt curious. "Support line," I answered calmly. Silence on the other end. Then a young man's trembling voice. I see something in the mirror. It's standing behind me." I heard his panicked breathing. I heard who I had been just days ago. I glanced at the mirror. The shadow behind me tilted its head slightly, listening. "Don't turn around," I said gently. "Do you want me to help you?" "Yes," he whispered, nearly crying. I smiled. This time, I didn't need the mirror to know. "Then listen carefully," I said, my voice lowering, soothing. "Just look at it. Don't be afraid. Just keep looking." There was silence. Then a long, shaky inhale. I can see it more clearly now. I closed my eyes. Inside my head, there was no longer a clear boundary between my voice and the other one. Only a single calm, steady thought remained. The door is open. And this time, I'm the one standing outside. The story ends here. If these stories haunt you, if they send a chill down your spine in the quiet of the night, don't forget to like and subscribe to Bong Toi Trong Dem so you won't miss what comes next. Every like, every subscription gives me a reason to keep telling these stories, even the ones I'm not always sure I want to remember. See you in the next video on Bong Toi Trong Dem.